Good evening. Am I audible?
Good evening, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So let us do the economy part of PRAHAAR. So far we have revised in the last 5-7 sessions. We have revised internal security. We have revised international relations. We have revised ethics. We have revised GS1 and GS2 common topics like poverty, development. Yesterday we did GS2 stakeholders of development, governance topic, NGOs, SHGs, etc. Now moving on to the GS3. In GS3 economy and environment and disaster management, we will be revising in the coming up till Tuesday, and that will complete the entire syllabus revision once. Okay, so today we have to see economy. In economy there are two parts. One is the static economy and one is the current economy. In current we will be doing $5 trillion economy, semiconductor, critical mineral missions, production linked incentive scheme, 10 years of digital India, make in India. Those are current based themes. But static mein jo themes hai, that is, there is inequality, there is inclusive growth, agriculture, direct indirect subsidies we have already done, there is government budgeting, there is inflation, there is sustainability of economy, green economy, so on and so forth. These are some of the topics from economy perspective. Okay, so first topic that we will be taking today from the static economy perspective is inequality. Now obviously with respect to inequality there will be various stats or various reports. Very famous report with respect to inequality is the Oxfam report, World Inequality Report by Oxfam. Then there is Piketty and Lucas report. So Thomas Piketty की बहुत famous line है, that is inherited capital and inherited wealth and invested capital grow faster than income. That is a very famous. Please mute. So they grow faster than income. So what is the Piketty and Lucas report? Then there is the WEF's social mobility report, that also we will be seeing. Then we will understand the causes of inequality in India as well as its impacts and ways to address inequality. And in ways to address, we will talk about green GDP, we will talk about gender inequality index, we will talk about Bhutan's gross national happiness, and in way forward, inclusive growth and sustainable development. These are the two way forwards or two pillars of development or two models of development which should have been there. Okay, so first and foremost, if I ask you what is inequality, what will be your answer? What is inequality according to you? Yes, there. So first, mute कर लीजिए. What is inequality according to you? Nothing. No inequality. Rishika, what is inequality? एटलीस्ट कुछ नहीं बता पाएंगे तो हम ये तो कह पाएंगे ना कि Article 38 talks about two types of inequality. One is the inequality of status, opportunity, and the other is the inequality of income. Yes.
And sir, Article 39B and Article 39C also to prevent the concentration of wealth.
Those are ways to address inequality. Yes. To prevent concentration of wealth and the material resources should be so distributed to serve the common good. अगर कुछ नहीं याद आ रहा है तो हम ये पॉलिटी का inequality बता देंगे. Shavya, what is inequality according to you?
So difference in status, opportunities.
Okay. So the difference in the wealth, prestige, and power. Okay, that is also inequality. So there is a very famous book, Capitalism in 21st Century by Thomas Piketty. So उनकी एक line है, inherited wealth and invested capital grow faster than income. So that one of the reasons for inequality is inherited wealth, invested capital. इसीलिए capital पे आपका capital gains tax लगता है. Wealth पे भी एक argument चल रहा था कि wealth tax लगा दिया जाए. Okay. Then Christian Lagarde, the previous IMF managing director, she said when women do better, economies do better. So one of the definite pillars of inequality is gender inequality. There will be caste-based inequality. There will be region-based inequality. There is in international relations, the north-south divide. So inequality can be seen from family to society to national to international level. And women are bearing the inequality status at across these levels. Okay. Then there is some statistics. You can quote the World Inequality Report. Now there is 23 and 24 report also. According to that, at the international level, top 10% own 76% of total wealth, while the poorest 50%, they own less than 2%. Women's share in total income from work was 30% in 1990, 35% now. So there has not been any major change, even in gender inequality. COVID, it increased inequality. This report categorizes India as a poor and very unequal country. भारत का गिनी कोफिशिएंट देखेंगे तो अभी थोड़ा सा इंप्रूव हुआ है, बट इट इज स्टिल वेरी वेरी अनइक्वल. ओके, सो you can draw this diagram, Piketty and Lucas diagram. इन्होंने एक रिपोर्ट लिखी थी फ्रॉम ब्रिटिश राज टू बिलियनर राज. दे हैड रिटन इट फॉर इंडिया. उनका कहना यह है कि when income tax was introduced in 1922, that time 21% of the national income was with the top 1%. And in 2020, 2014, 22% of the total income of the nation is with 1%. So India is as unequal as it was in 1922. 1980s mein inequality had reduced at its lowest for several reasons which were also problematic, but inequality had reduced. तो इनका कहना यह है कि share of national income accruing to top 1% was highest in 2014 since 1992 when income tax was introduced for the first time. Okay. Then when we talk about the social mobility report of World Economic Forum, so it takes an average Indian 7 generations, 7 janam lag jayega to transition from lower income group to middle income group, whereas in Scandinavian countries it happens within their lifetime. So that is the level of inequality in India. आपको जो है 7 जन्म लग जाएगा just to exit from one income. Although I am of the view that because of this digital media or because of this digital age, this definitely has come down. Many people from rural areas, they are able to faster transition from lower income group to middle income group thanks to the new digital age. And while many think that AI is going to increase inequality, I am of the view that it will also play a leveling role. It will be giving power in the hands of those who the traditional structures are not able to reach. जैसे कि आपका सोशल मीडिया था, it gave voice to the voiceless. Similarly, my view is that AI will be, especially in India, it will be bringing a kind of revolution which will bring some kind of equality. So, understanding inequality, first, inequality is multidimensional. There is social inequality, there is political inequality, and there is economic inequality. Social inequality, inequality based on caste, gender. There is inequality based on healthcare. There is patriarchy. there is inequality based on access to quality education. In the political inequality, there is criminalization of politics and there is dynasty politics, again highlighting political inequality in India. Those मतलब अभी भी वो समय चल रहा है कि राजा का बेटा ही राजा बन रहा है. That is the state, and these people are supposedly championing the cause of constitution, protecting the constitution, protecting the democracy. They talk about, for example, if you talk about Bihar, where elections are going to happen, one of the dynasts talks about how there is corruption in Bihar, how Bihar is number one in crimes, etc. I don't know whether he is giving a report card of his father, or whether he is that naive not to even recognize even this much of basic, or whether the people are that naive that they cannot think beyond their surnames. तो इस तरह की गुलामी जो है, जैसे एक कहावत है, यू गेट द गवर्नमेंट यू डिजर्व. So one of the reasons why there is lack of development in Bihar, because we choose such kind of jokers. Then there is economic inequality. Oxfam report says that unemployment rose during COVID, whereas the wealth of top 1% increased. Even when there is a calamity like COVID, अमीर जो है अमीर हो रहे थे, their wealth increased, whereas more than 500,000 people were losing their employment. Okay, now what are the causes of inequality? Causes भी आप ऐसा ही सोच सकते हैं, social, political और economic. So failure of land reform, structural changes in Indian economy. इंडियन इकोनॉमी क्या हुआ कि एग्रीकल्चर से सीधे सर्विसेज में चला गया. देयर वाज नो इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन टू अब्सॉर्ब. सो इंडियन इकोनॉमी हैज अ प्रिकॉशियस मॉडल. सो structural economy in Indian structural change in Indian economy, the precocious growth model. According to economic survey, we transitioned from agriculture to services sector. Agriculture employs 45% of the workforce. What is its contribution to the GDP? Yes,
it's like 15%.
Yes, 15-16%. It has remained stagnant, whereas it uses 80% of the water resources, and it utilizes more than 54% or 55% of the land resources. So India ka land, India ka water, India ka human resource, it is going into agriculture, whose output is the low. This is the cause of poverty in India, according to World Bank. Then there is failure of poverty alleviation programs. There is corruption and leakages. There is crony capitalism. इंडिया में जो है ना, अकाउंटेबिलिटी भी बहुत कम है. For example, everybody has forgotten what are the scams, in which era scams happened, what were the kind of scams happening. People were even doing scams on fodder. But people have very short memory. You cannot think beyond your surname. उसका एक कारण क्या है कि नंबर ऑफ टैक्स पेयर्स इंडिया में कम है एज कंपेयर टू दी वोटर्स. सो डेटा सेज दैट देयर आर, अब तो ये बढ़ गया है, बट देयर आर only 4 taxpayers compared to 100 voters in India. Scandinavian countries में there is 96 taxpayers compared to 100 voters. So if you are a taxpayer, obviously you will make the government accountable for its spending, for its misspending, for corruption, etc. Yes? Yes or no? भाई अगर मान लीजिए आपको स्कूल की स्थिति खराब मिलेगी, कॉलेज की स्थिति खराब मिलेगी, हेल्थ केयर की स्थिति खराब मिलेगी, you will question the government where your taxes are being going. Yes or no? बताइए भाई।
Yes, sir.
यस, बिकॉज टैक्स जो है उसका एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल है, दैट इट ब्रिंग्स सिटीजन्स पार्टिसिपेशन इन द स्टेट एक्टिविटी. सिटीजन्स विल बी क्वेश्चनिंग. जैसे अभी आप देखिए, तुरंत लोग कहते हैं आई एम अ टैक्स पेयर, हु आर यू टू क्वेश्चन मी? if any political leader today questions a youth, the youth replies back, I am a taxpayer, I am an honest taxpayer. Okay, then India has low manufacturing base. India is not industrialized to its potential. That is one of the reasons for inequality. There is also policy induced inequality. जैसे ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन हुआ तो वो कुछ ही एरियाज में हुआ. लिबरलाइजेशन, प्राइवेटाइजेशन, ग्लोबलाइजेशन, it was stuck up because of various reasons. One of the reasons we saw was the bureaucracy. So what happened was there was jobless growth. The country became richer, but the government and people are poorer. Policy mein labor laws were also there. There was uh, uh, capitalism with no exit. Earlier there was socialism with entry barriers. Today we have capitalism without exit. So these are some of the causes. In this context only, one static idea is what is GDP, what is potential GDP, and GDP comparison to other ways of measuring progress of the economy. So GDP, as you all know, it is the final monetary value of all goods and services produced in the territory in a fixed period of time. There is nominal GDP and real GDP. What is the difference between nominal GDP and real GDP? Real GDP accounts for?
So real GDP accounts for inflation.
Yes, inflation is adjusted in real GDP. As opposed to this, there is something called potential GDP. Where can we reach potentially when the market forces of demand and supply are working at full output? So the highest market value of goods and services that can be produced in an economy over a period of time is called potential GDP, where the economy has achieved full employment and that aggregate demand does not exceed aggregate supply. देखिए, थ्योरेटिकल कॉन्सेप्ट है, होता नहीं है. कभी भी ऐसा नहीं होगा कि इकोनॉमी हैज अचीव्ड फुल एम्प्लॉयमेंट, बट थ्योरेटिकली इफ वी आर डिस्कसिंग पोटेंशियल जीडीपी, उसके लिए क्या क्या चाहिए हमको? हमको कैपिटल फॉर्मेशन चाहिए. इंडिया नीड्स कैपिटल फॉर्मेशन. ओके, फॉर एग्जांपल, वी नीड capital goods. If there will be capital goods, especially in heavy industry, we will have a manufacturing base. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अभी हम कंप्यूटर्स के उसमें वर्क कर रहे हैं, तो व्हाट इज द थिंग दैट वी आर टारगेटिंग? व्हाई वी आर टारगेटिंग सेमीकंडक्टर्स? yes, because it lies at the base of the entire IT industry. Mobile phone, computers, all digital devices running on some kind of timing or controller would require ICs. Okay. Next is, after capital formation, there should be ICOR, incremental capital output ratio should be low. हम कम कैपिटल डाल के अपना आउटपुट जो है ज्यादा बढ़ा सके. इसके लिए हमको टेक्नोलॉजी की जरूरत होगी. देयर शुड बी टेक्नोलॉजिकल डेवलपमेंट. हमारा लेबर फोर्स भी जो है वो स्किल्ड होना चाहिए, एफिशिएंट होना चाहिए. लेबर लॉज जो है दे शुड बी फ्लेक्सिबल. देयर शुड बी लेस or there should be a balanced power to the trade unions. Our human resource, there we should be reaping the demographic dividend instead of entering into demographic winter. What is the challenge to potential GDP? Rising inequality. Inequality will always prevent the GDP from reaching the potential GDP. There will be a vicious cycle given by economic survey. If there is low demand, there will be low production. अगर production कम होगा तो salaries वगैरह भी कम जाएंगी. Low disposable income होगा. Low disposable income हुआ तो there will be low demand. Okay. So in this document, one of the good things is you will find many ready-made diagrams, very beautiful diagrams, which you can use in your answers. So second is deglobalization. Today the world is not accommodative of a rising India. There is a lot of uncertainty. अगर हम तेल ज्यादा खरीद ले रहे हैं तो फिर एक अंकल को बुरा लग जा रहा है. So the world is not accommodating as it was 20 years ago when China was rising. So therefore, definitely there is deglobalization, which is a challenge to the potential GDP. There is the NPA of the banks. Today, most of the NPA problem is a thing of the past. There is decline in investment and saving rate, and finally there is high inflation. Okay. Now, ये जो जीडीपी का जो मेजरिंग वे है, चाहे पोटेंशियल हो चाहे जीडीपी हो, व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम इन द जीडीपी मॉडल? It does not factor in negative externalities. For example, environment. What is the cost to environment that the GDP does not take into account for? The GDP also does not factor in inequality. ये तो बस ये देखेगा कि आपका जो फाइनल प्राइस है ऑफ द गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज वो कितना बढ़ गया, whether it is accruing to the 1% or it is accruing to bottom 50%, that is not reflected in the GDP. Then system of national accounts excludes domestic work of women as unpaid labor. So that is again one of the practical limitations of GDP. It does not treat the work done by women as paid labor. Then GDP does not reflect the improvement or change in standards of living. Because of these limitations, there is a debate between growth and development. So what is the difference between growth and development? This you can quote in essay also. This you can quote in your ethics also. Growth, merely monetary value, whereas development, it is progressive change in socio-economic structure of the country, both technological and institutional. It is quantitative, whereas development is qualitative. It is measured by GDP, GNP. It is measured by gross national happiness, green GDP, etc. It is better for developed countries. This is better for developing countries. Developing countries are facing problems of inequality. They are facing problems of socio-economic barriers, etc. So we should be measuring development rather than we should be measuring growth. So far everyone is with me. What is GDP? What are the figures with respect to GDP? Before that, what is inequality? What is the cause of inequality? What are the various datas with respect to inequality in India? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Everyone?
sir.
Okay. Any doubt till here? Any doubt in any of the
No,
terms?
sir.
Okay. So now what are the ways to address development? First is green GDP. Can anybody tell me what is green GDP?
So when we are accounting of environmental factors in GDP as well.
Yes, when we are accounting for the costs to development or when we are accounting for the natural costs. जैसे मान लीजिए कि अगर हम रैपिड रेल ट्रांजिट कॉरिडोर बना रहे हैं तो उससे जो है इंडस्ट्रीज आएंगी, उससे जो है हाउसिंग प्रोजेक्ट्स आएंगे, उससे एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ेगा, उससे जो है देयर विल बी connectivity, there will be faster movement of goods and services. But we also have to figure out how many trees did we or how many forests were diverted or how many forests were cut down for building this rapid corridor. अगर ये रैपिड कॉरिडोर बनाने में कोई नेशनल पार्क, कोई वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी आ रहा है, सो व्हाट इज द कॉस्ट टू द एनवायरनमेंट because of this project? That is called green GDP. So Shavya, please read these 3 lines.
Yes, sir. Used for expressing GDP after compensating for environment degradation, adjusting for environment. It is an attempt to measure the growth of an economy by subtracting the cost of environment. In India, the CAG conducts an environment audit within the broad framework of compliance and environment audit EIA.
Yes. So therefore, one way is green GDP. HDI is not very difficult. You already know about Human Development Index. We did in poverty. Then there is the gross national happiness. It is a term coined by the Majesty, the King of Bhutan. This measures not just economic aspects, but also gives importance to non-economic aspects of well-being. It has 4 pillars: political, economic, environmental, and cultural. Bhutan lays a lot of emphasis on cultural well-being and economic well-being. Sorry, environmental well-being. भूटान के हिसाब से सिर्फ हमारी इकोनॉमिक बेटरमेंट हो जाए इससे हम हैप्पी नहीं रह सकते. A lot of happiness comes from cultural and environmental well-being, and they have given the standards of living or what constitutes happiness. There is good governance, there is good health, 4 well-being concepts: the time use, education, living standard, communal harmony, ecological diversity. All of them go on to constitute gross national happiness. And in the way forward for inequality, there is the inclusive growth, which is growth plus redistribution, and there is sustainable development, which is growth plus redistribution plus environmental conservation. So inequality will be on these 3 pillars: Paris deal, which is taking care of the climate; Sendai framework, which is the disaster risk resilience framework. This will lead to SDGs or sustainable development goals. Together, they will be able to provide development in real sense. So that is the first topic, that is inequality, growth, green growth, gross national happiness. Any doubt in that? Yes. So before we see sustainable development and inclusive development, let us see one of the problems, perennial problems to both, that is unemployment. And there is a very interesting quote: recession is when your neighbor loses job. Depression is when you lose yours. A very famous quote given by Harriet Truman to tell what is the difference between recession and what is the difference between depression, just to highlight the width of the issue. Okay, so Margaret Thatcher कहते हैं inflation is the parent of unemployment. So unemployment, quote, context, data, definition by NSSO, the types of unemployment, the causes, impact, and steps taken. And there is the draft national employment policy, and there is inclusive growth. These are the steps to unemployment. अगर हम data देखें तो there has been rising corruption in public examination. Public examination employment has reduced from 19 lakh to 17.6 lakh. PLFS, this is an old data, current data is different, but unemployment was 6.1% at a time. And there was also a paradox of unemployment कि एक तरफ GST का data तो record होता जा रहा है. Now GST's data is reaching even almost 2 lakh crore per month. एक समय जब ये 1 लाख करोड़ पहुंचा था 1-2 साल पहले, तो बहुत बड़ी बात मानी जाती थी that GST collection reached 1 lakh crore. Right now we are touching 2 lakh crore. तो एक तरफ GST का collection increase हो रहा है और दूसरी तरफ unemployment जो है वो बढ़ रहा है. So this is highlighting that jobless growth is still persisting. There is low employment elasticity. During COVID, unemployment increased. First wave में 78 million people lost jobs. Second wave में 13 million people lost jobs. Between 2021 to 2022, 33 million people were looking for jobs and they did not get jobs. women accounted for less than 11% of all jobs in 2019, but they accounted for 52% of the job losses. तो जॉब तो इनके पास कम थी, लेकिन जॉब लॉसेस में इनको पहले फायर किया गया. Okay, then economic census says that there is 47 crore workforce, 23 crore in agriculture, 24 crore in secondary and tertiary sector. Public employment sank from 19 million, or government jobs sank from 19 million to 17.6 million. These are the statistics. Definition क्या होता है unemployment का? NSSO defines unemployment as a situation in which a person is capable of working, willing to work, but does not find unemployment. That is the definition given by NSSO. Types of unemployment, I think we have already discussed in migration topic. But disguised unemployment, disguised क्या है? एक ही खेत में बहुत सारे लोग काम कर रहे हैं. There is son, there is second son, there is wife, there is second wife, obviously there is father and wife. अगर हम इसमें से कुछ लोगों को बाहर निकाल दें तो the marginal reduction in the productivity will be zero. उतना ही फसल फिर भी उगेगा जितना पहले उग रहा था, यानी ये लोग फालतू में काम कर रहे हैं वहां पे. Where more people are employed than they are actually needed. Marginal productivity is zero. Structural unemployment, because of the structural changes in the economy, जैसे agriculture से services में चले गए, उसके लिए हो गया. Seasonal unemployment, क्योंकि खेती का एक particular season है तो बाकी समय वो मनरेगा के वर्कर बन जाते हैं, so they are unemployed. Fictional unemployment, this is voluntary unemployment, जैसे आप लोग हैं, you are transitioning from one job to another, और आप जानबूझ के unemployed है. Cyclical unemployment, there is a boom and bust cycle. Boom cycle में क्या होता है? More investment, more employment, more disposable income, more demand. Bust में क्या होता है? Less investment, less employment, less disposable income, less demand. So many times unemployment is due to the boom and bust in certain sectors. Now, causes of unemployment, there can be structural causes, there can be socio-economic causes, there can be demographic causes, there can be policy induced causes. So let us see. Structural mein to agriculture, it is employing 45% of the workforce but contributing 15% to the GDP. Youth is exiting the sector. There is premature deindustrialization. India has weak manufacturing base, high incremental capital adequacy ratio, large informal sector. In the services sector, there is jobless growth, there is deglobalization, there is low employment elasticity. Socio-economic causes क्या है? There are entry barriers, low female labor force participation, there is law and order disputes, there is frequent protests, rioting, etc. Then COVID-19, COVID brought supply chain disruption, COVID brought demand disruption, that became a major cause for unemployment. Demography related क्या है? 5% of the Indian workforce is formally trained. 12 मिलियन वर्कफोर्स हर साल ऐड होता है, लेकिन जॉब जो है हम 1 ही मिलियन क्रिएट कर पा रहे हैं. सो देयर इज नॉट एनफ गुड जॉब्स. While workforce is increasing year on year, but good jobs are not increasing year on year. There is a kind of mismatch. Then the Delhi's disability adjusted labor years of Indian workforce is very high. Indian workforce, in short, is not very productive. Poor health, poor education, poor skills, low productivity, poverty, this cycle continues. So we have to break this cycle. This is what the government is doing. For example, health के लिए अगर देखेंगे तो government is coming up with Ayushman Bharat. Government is coming up with affordable medicine through Jan Aushadhi Kendra. For education, government has come up with new education policy. For skills, government came up with Skill India Mission. So they are therefore trying to break this low productivity cycle, and thereby poverty will be, or the vicious cycle of poverty will be removed. There are sometimes government or policy induced unemployment. जैसे अगर हम इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर को फॉर्मलाइज करने की कोशिश करें तो हमारा इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर जो है ना, ये बहुत कम मार्जिन पे काम करता है। दूसरी तरफ आप देखेंगे कि इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर को जो कैपिटल मिलता है वो बहुत हाई कॉस्ट पे है, 6% 7%। तो आरबीआई का रेपो रेट है, अगर ये लोग लोन लेना चाहेंगे तो दे विल बी गेटिंग एट 11%, 12%, 15%, वेर एज इन द वेस्ट कैपिटल इज अवेलेबल एट 1%, 2% टू द पीपल। सो हाउ विल वी बी एबल टू compete? 10% का तो मार्जिन जो है यहीं पे चला गया। सो इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर जो है इतने कम मार्जिन पे एक्ट कर रहा है, प्लस देर इज compliance burden of GST, demonetization, cashless economy, other statutory compliances, जिसकी वजह से informal sector में it is becoming burdensome, it is not able to grow. We also saw, although government has addressed this, definition of MSME has been changed, but definition की वजह से there was the Peter Pan syndrome. These industries, they were not growing. There was regulatory cholesterol according to economic survey. There were labor laws, 44 central laws to open an enterprise. Now government has codified them into 4 labor codes. There was the NPA issue and the Chakravyuh challenge. Many of the inefficient companies, they are not able to shut down. जैसे आज भी आप देखेंगे कि सरकार BSNL को ढो रही है. And if you talk about the model given by many of the political parties in India, so according to them इनको ढोते रहना चाहिए, क्योंकि इनको अपनी जेब से पैसा देना नहीं है. They have to remain in power only for their foreseeable future. बस अपना समय सही बीत जाए, उसके बाद जो है उन्हीं के बच्चे आएंगे. They will give new kind of dreams or visions. नया समाजवाद का आपको जो है पाठ पढ़ाएंगे उनके बच्चे. Hopefully they pass at least 9th in able to teach us that. सो इम्पैक्ट अगर देखें तो गवर्नमेंट के ऊपर इम्पैक्ट होता है, बिजनेस के ऊपर होता है और सोसाइटी के ऊपर होता है. गवर्नमेंट के ऊपर क्या होता है? अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट की वजह से लॉ एंड ऑर्डर चैलेंज, रिड्यूस्ड इन्वेस्टमेंट, सोशल सिक्योरिटी बर्डन, रिड्यूस्ड टैक्सेस. दिस विल अफेक्ट आत्मनिर्भर भारत. बिजनेस पे क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा? पोटेंशियल जीडीपी नॉट रीच्ड, पीटर पैन सिंड्रोम, दैट इज बिजनेसेस विल वांट टू रिमेन स्मॉल, we will lose the comparative advantage, cheap labor will be lost. Society में there will be distress migration, there will be feminization of agriculture, there will be ruralization of old age, there will be increased protest for reservation. क्योंकि मान लीजिए एग्रीकल्चर काम नहीं करेगा, फैक्ट्री काम नहीं करेगा, तो सभी लोग जो है गवर्नमेंट जॉब्स में जाना चाहेंगे, प्लस they would want reservation in government jobs, which is what is happening. For example, in Haryana, Jats are asking for reservation. In Maharashtra, Marathas are asking. These are two very affluent agriculture dominant class. But even they are asking, that shows the condition of farmers is weakened. There will be bare branches और क्रिमिनलाइजेशन. ऐसे लोग होंगे समाज में जिनको हम असामाजिक तत्व कह देंगे, who have no interest in upholding the social contract, upholding the rule of law. Okay, so for various steps taken for unemployment, so there is Manrega, doubling farmers income, GI tag, public investment in infrastructure, providing urban amenities to rural areas for rural employment. Then entrepreneurship के लिए there is Skill India, there is Startup India, there is Mudra loan, there is national IPR policy. In manufacturing, government came up with PLI scheme in 13 sector. There is ease of doing business. There is insolvency and bankruptcy code. There is FDI reforms for vulnerable section. For women, there is Stand Up India. There is maternity benefit increased from 12 weeks to 26 weeks. There is new sectors in which women are allowed employment, like combat roles. There is Smile, support for marginalized individuals and livelihood enterprise. There are social security schemes like PM Kishan, Shramik Mandhan, Swanidhi, Atal Pension Yojana, PM Garib Kalyan Yojana, etc. conclusion mein, there is the draft employment policy. The underlying principle is enhancing human capital, creating sufficient number of good jobs, strengthening social cohesion, and convergence of various government efforts and hand of trust towards the private sector. Okay, so that is all about the unemployment topic, which is a major issue which prevents growth from becoming inclusive growth or sustainable growth, which is one of the major causes for also rising inequality in India. That is the relation of the second topic with the first and the third. So is it clear?
Sir,
Yes, one by one.
sir,
in the boon and the bane cycle, the boon cycle is for employment, right?
Yes, boom
Because
cycle
it is
will cause more employment. For example, between 2003 to 2008-9, there was a boom cycle. Before the subprime crisis of US, there was the boom cycle. वहां से फिर bust cycle हुआ between 2008 to 2014.
Sir, please explain the IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code.
It is not a one line explanation. It is an entire topic in itself. देखिए समस्या क्या है? Economic survey says that India there is an exit problem. You cannot shut down your factory and this would lead to efficiency in the factors of production. अब मान लीजिए जैसे BSNL है तो वो नुकसान में है, सरकार को या तो उसको प्राइवेटाइज कर देना चाहिए या बंद कर देना चाहिए. Does it make any business sense to run a business with 12,000 crore, 18,000 crore per year or losses? Yes. Because resources तो हमारे पास जो हैं वो लिमिटेड है एंड रिसोर्स डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन और रिसोर्स एफिशिएंसी ये कहता है कि फैक्टर्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन में एफिशिएंटली डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होने चाहिए. तो सरकार जो है इनको बेल आउट करती है, गवर्नमेंट बेल्स आउट सम अंडर परफॉर्मिंग बैंक्स एक्सेट्रा. प्लस प्राइवेट सेक्टर भी अगर अपना कोई फैक्ट्री वगैरह बंद करना चाहे तो इट वुड बी फेसिंग यूनियंस एंड so many other things. So India had capitalism with limited exit. 4 साल 5 साल लग जाता है भारत में to wrap up a business. Now government came up with solving this problem through insolvency and bankruptcy code. It came up with a procedure कि जैसे आप मान लीजिए, now there is a definition of insolvency, there is a definition of bankruptcy, but मान लीजिए एक साधारण तौर पे कि आपका बिजनेस दिवालिया हो गया, you have to shut down. So during that process your business, government will take up that business and give to an insolvency professional. वो लोग चलाएंगे और वो देखेंगे कि बिजनेस को चलाया जा सकता है या नहीं. अगर नहीं चला जा सकता है तो they will be going for liquidation. और फिर लिक्विडेशन में किस किस को पैसा वापस करना है, किस ऑर्डर में वापस करना है, सिक्योर्ड क्रेडिटर्स कौन है, अनसिक्योर्ड क्रेडिटर्स कौन है, सैलरी वालों को कब मिलेगा, इक्विटी वालों को कब मिलेगा. दिस इज ऑल given in this insolvency and bankruptcy code. The idea basically is to free up your economic resources for better resource utilization.
Yes, sir.
Any other doubt?
No, sir.
Anybody else? Yes. Yes, no. So inclusive growth and sustainable development, I will not go into the details point wise for this, but definitely in a very brief I will be discussing, and then we will do the revision of all the topics that we have discussed so far. So first, what is the data with respect to inclusive growth or lack of inclusive growth? भारत में जो है मल्टी डायमेंशनल पॉवर्टी इंडेक्स कहता है कि 373 मिलियन कंटिन्यू टू एक्सपीरियंस एक्यूट पॉवर्टी. पॉजिटिव डेटा ये कहता है इंडिया हैज लिफ्टेड टू 71 मिलियन बिटवीन 2005 एंड 2020. अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट में 30% ऑफ द इंडियन यूथ आर नीट, not in education, not in employment, not in training. नीट का मतलब वो मत समझिए. Social inequality, it takes 7 generations to exit a class. Health, India's ranking is 102 in the global hunger index. 60% out of pocket expenditure in health. So there is lack of insurance, there is lack of protection in health expenses. 78% of the population in urban areas do not seek medical consultation when sick because of high आउट ऑफ पॉकेट एक्सपेंडिचर. आप जो है केमिस्ट से जाके दवाई ले लेंगे, आप डॉक्टर को जनरली नहीं दिखाना चाहते हैं, विच इज द रिवर्स इन वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज. इन्वायरमेंट में आउट ऑफ द 20 मोस्ट पोल्यूटेड सिटीज 14 आर इन इंडिया. सो हर तरह से हमारे यहाँ में there is a challenge to inclusive growth, whether it be environment, whether it be health, whether it be education, or whether it be other pillars. तो inclusive growth कहते किसको है? World Bank कहता है it refers to both the pace and pattern of growth which are interlinked and must be addressed together. In very simple idea, inclusive growth is growth plus redistribution. OECD कहता है it is growth that is fairly redistributed across the society and creates opportunities for all. Okay, so there are various pillars to inclusive growth. There is redistribution, there is public trust, there is technology and innovation, and there is ease of living. They are the important pillars of inclusive growth. What are the various challenges? Obviously, unemployment or jobless growth is a challenge. The structure of Indian economy is a challenge to reaching inclusive growth. There is lack of social mobility in India. There is very high inequality of all types, political, social, economic, environmental concerns. The poorer states continue to be flooded annually. There are super cyclones, intense climatic events. They are also an important deterrent to reaching inclusive growth. Security concern is there, left-wing extremism, insurgency, external state and non-state actor, and there is policy vacuum. There is increased center-state confrontation, there is reduced government footprint, and there is corruption. What are the steps taken to bring inclusive growth? Executive steps, legislative steps, judicial steps. Executive में health, PM Jan Aushadhi, Jan Arogya, National Digital Health Mission, new education policy. For employment, there is Mudra. For vulnerable section, there is Accessible India campaign, etc. In legislature, there is right to education, right to information. There is national rural employment. There is reservation for economically weaker section. In judiciary, there is free legal aid, there is e-courts, there is public interest litigation. There is alternate dispute resolution, such as Lok Adalats. Privacy has been interpreted. Way forward में Niti Aayog talks about India at 75 to have rapid growth, which includes 9 to 10% by this is a previous at 75. India is already at 79. So this is at least a better one from using ARC. So you can talk about Niti Aayog in its India at 75 talks about various measures. For example, reaching 9 to 10% growth annually, increased inclusion. For example, cities need redevelopment of slums. In healthcare, ambulatory services. In education, higher education enrollment ratio, STEM field. Goal of governance should be citizen-centric or good governance. World Bank also gives the, World Economic Forum gives the three-pronged approach. There is investment in public infrastructure, there is investment in labor-intensive sector, and there is cooperation between government at all levels. This is the approach to reach inclusive growth. Okay. So last topic in the growth series is sustainable development. सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट का मतलब सिंपली हो गया ग्रोथ प्लस रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन प्लस कंजर्वेशन ऑफ इन्वायरमेंट. So the definition of sustainable development, why do we need, what are the three pillars of sustainable development? That is economic sustainability, social sustainability, environment sustainability. What then the challenges? Challenges are very similar to what we have studied above. So lack of inclusive growth is a challenge to sustainable development. Unemployment is a challenge to sustainable development. Inequality is a challenge to sustainable development. Then the measures SDG, what are the goals, progress, and challenges? What are the efforts by India and the world on sustainable development? The indices, there is Sustainable Development Index by SSDN, and there is Sustainable Development Index by Niti Aayog and Way Forward. So definition, sustainable development is the development which meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. So there is something called equity. This equity will be intergenerational. This concept was born out of Brundtland Commission report titled Our Common Future. इस report के बाद ही there was the famous 1992 Rio Earth Summit, from which various organizations, policies, etc. were born, like UNFCCC, Bonn Convention, etc. So why do we need sustainable development? क्योंकि हमारी स्थिति इतनी खराब है. There is over exploitation of natural resources. Coral reefs around the world are getting extinct. There is the 6th mass extinction of species. Earth Overshoot Day was in July. Overshoot Day is the day जिस दिन अर्थ ने जो है अपने साल भर के रिसोर्सेज को यूज कर लिया है. तो जुलाई में ही हो गया. दैट इज फॉर द रेस्ट 6 months or 7 months. Sorry, for the next 5 months, we are borrowing from next year. So whatever resources we are using, that is being used from next year. Then inequality, resource development. There is a north-south divide. North has 20% population, consumes 80% of the resources. Food production भी हमारा जो है बढ़ना चाहिए. It should be doubled in the next 40 years. While 23% of the agriculture land is degraded, 3.5 billion population face water inadequacy. Lack of international effort. Global problems require global solution, but the West is busy in imposing tariffs. This is a very excellent way to hoodwink their responsibility. Trump ने तो एक लाइन में कह दिया कि हम पेरिस डील से बाहर हैं. Nobody is going to question why, who, or on what authority. At least no moral authority would say that any of the Western countries can exit the Paris deal. So global warming and climate change, Earth has already, from the pre-industrial level, the temperatures has risen to 1 degree according to the IPCC report. Now, what are the 3 pillars of sustainable development? There is economic sustainability, there is social sustainability, and there is environment sustainability. Economic sustainability में हमको economic inequality को remove करना है. Social sustainability में we have to work for women empowerment. We have to work for elimination of caste-based discrimination. We have to focus on improving the quality of life. Environment sustainability में we have to focus on environment impact assessment. We have to focus on preservation as well as conservation. We have to protect these species. We have to protect critical habitats, biodiversity, hotspots, etc. What are the challenges to sustainable development? Inequitable growth. हमने ऊपर देख लिया inequality में. We have seen the inequality report. Overpopulation is definitely a challenge because it creates pressure on natural, physical, and social infrastructure. Although today there is a question mark raised on this. It may not be overpopulation, it may be inefficient use of resources. For example, an average American uses 6 times the resources used by an average African. तो अगर अफ्रीका के लोग जो हैं अगर 6 गुना पॉपुलेशन भी है, then also they are not matching the average American. Okay, then lack of leadership. There is the Kindleberger trap. Kindleberger trap. Nobody wants to take leadership in responsibilities. Everyone wants to take leadership in new resources. मान लीजिए कि अभी ऑयल डिस्कवर होगा अगर नॉर्थ पोल पे, तो there was also there is discovery of oil, suppose in Arctic. Every country will start claiming, but nobody is bothered about, let us say, ozone hole depletion rising. Nobody will be, Western countries will not be giving the adaptation and the mitigation fund, which is their responsibility, their historical responsibility. So US is withdrawing, China refuses to take leadership, India के पास capacity नहीं है so far to fulfill that position. There is loss of biodiversity, there is colony collapse disorder, there is intellectual property right, there is fight that there should be intellectual property right should be protected. Okay, so these are the challenges with respect to sustainable development. Now the sustainable development goals, because 2030 is going to be there, what will be our next goals? That is also a question. So there are 17 goals spread across 179 targets. There is also progress. What is the progress across those targets? अगर हम ये goals को अगर classify करें तो economic, social और environmental में कर सकते हैं. For example, affordable and clean energy, industry and innovation, responsible production and consumption, social में no poverty, zero hunger, good health being, quality education, gender inequality, cleanliness and sanitation, reduced inequality, environment में life on water, climate, life on land, peace and justice, international cooperation. These are the simple classification of the goals. Progress में देखा जाए तो there is considerable reduction in extreme poverty. The under 5 mortality rate has fallen by 49%. Affordable and clean energy, vast majority has now access to clean energy. Protection of life and on land and water, marine protected areas have doubled. Near universal ratification for Paris climate deal, although there are certain challenges. Biggest challenge was COVID-19. It stopped the progress of sustainable development. Then the climate change IPCC report is saying that we need more to be done. There is 26% increase in ocean acidification. More than 1 million species are now extinct. So that is, if a question is asked on SDGs, you can use this 1-page diagram on the goals, the progress and the challenges. What are the initiatives? EU has come up with polluter pays principle. India has come up with national solar mission. Clean energy के लिए BS4 से हम BS6 में चले गए. There is ban on single use of plastics in India. We have already said that we will reduce the GDP emission intensity by 23 to 35% of 2050 level. हमने जो है अपना नेक्स्ट INDC टारगेट भी दे दिया है, जिसमें कि हम कह रहे हैं कि हमारा जो है 50% जो पावर कैपेसिटी है दैट विल बी फ्रॉम रिन्यूएबल सोर्सेस. इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी जो पुराना टारगेट था वो तो हमने ऑलरेडी अचीव कर लिया 2022 में ही, जो हमने 2030 के लिए दिया था. So we have already given new INDC targets. There are some initiatives by NGOs also, like IUCN Red Data Book, traffic monitors illegal trading of flora and fauna. There is Bombay Natural Historical Society. So there is BNHS. There are 2 indices, one the Sustainable Development Index by SSDN and the Sustainable Development Goal by Niti Aayog. India is ranked 115 out of 162 countries. Way forward में environment commons such as rainforest must be safeguarded as crucial resources, economic transformation with efforts for participatory development and cooperation at all levels. So that is all on growth, inclusive growth, inequality, unemployment, sustainable development. Agriculture, we have already done in the previous class. Now, let us revise till now. If there is any doubt in any of these topics, please ask. Otherwise, I'll do the revision. Yes.
And sir,
Hmm.
sir, सर रिसेशन और डिप्रेशन में सर रिसेशन जो था सर वो कौन सी
रिसेशन इज अ टेक्निकल टर्म. यस, करेक्ट. कॉन्सेक्यूटिवली अगर आपका ग्रोथ डीएसेलरेट हो रहा है और नॉट ग्रोथ, आई मीन इफ देयर इज इन्फ्लेशन इन 2 quarters, that is called recession. If there is inflation with lack of growth, that is called stagnant inflation or stagnant growth. So recession is अगर 2 quarters में inflation बढ़ता जा रहा है.
Yes sir. And so depression,
See, different. You will have to talk about the impact it has on the macroeconomic level. अगर इसको थोड़ा सा टेक्निकल सेंस में देखें, for mains it may not be asked, but for prelims there is definitely like a debate or an understanding कि recession और depression में क्या होता है. So अगर हम टेक्निकल सेंस में देखें तो एक लाइन लिख लीजिए, recession is 2 or more consecutive quarters of decline in GDP. I said inflation, that is not inflation, decline in GDP. मान लीजिए कि जीडीपी ग्रोथ इस क्वार्टर में 4% था, अगले क्वार्टर में 3% है, उसके अगले क्वार्टर में 2% है, तो वी विल कॉल दिस एज रिसेशन. सो when there is a decline in 2 consecutive quarters decline in the GDP, that is called recession. I said inflation by chance, it is not inflation, it is GDP. Then when we talk about depression, it is basically increasing this quarter to, let us say, 2 to 3 years. ये जो 2 क्वार्टर में हो रहा है, क्वार्टर मतलब 3 months. So if it is happening for 2 quarters, so it is 6 months. For example, during COVID, India went under the technical recession.
yes
right?
sir.
But when this increases, let us say, to 2 years, 3 years, then recession can be technically classified as depression. Or when it is going to affect the macroeconomic indicators for a longer period, that is growth is deaccelerating, inflation is on a rise, there is loss in employment or high unemployment, that may together be constituted. Matlab depression is slightly a bigger concept in its coverage of macroeconomic indicators also. It includes high inflation, high unemployment, low growth for a longer period.
Yes sir. Thank you sir.
Yes, any other doubt? जैसे आप अगर 1930s का ग्रेट डिप्रेशन की बात करेंगे,
Yes sir.
तो दैट हैपेंड फॉर अ डेकेड ऑलमोस्ट.
Yes sir.
I am of the view that the Second World War was started strategically to end this Great Depression. Because it coincides, 1939, the Second World War is happening.
Yes sir.
Yes, anybody else? Any doubt? This depression also started from a stock market crash. That is called I think Black Friday or Black Thursday, something like that. Yes, any other doubt? Shabya, Dipesh, Rituraj, Gauri, Mita. Anybody? So far, is it clear? या
Yes.
फिर इतनी जल्दी हो गया कि समझ भी नहीं आया कि क्या हुआ क्या नहीं हुआ? How many of you are subscribing to this view? See, I understand that part because each of these topics is one class topic. So we have done something that is done across 4 or 5 classes in, I think, less than an hour and a half. So if there is any doubt, if you would like to ask, please ask. Otherwise, we will do the revision. How many of you want to do the mind mapping or mind palace revision? Or you just want to see the next topic and get done away with and enjoy your Sunday?
The revision.
Revision. Because next Friday is the exam. Yes, no doubts. Chaliye. So we did start with today's topic with inequality. We saw the quote with respect to inequality, the statistics with respect to inequality. In statistics, we saw the Oxfam report. The Oxfam report said that globally, top 1% controlled the 76% of wealth. This report classifies India as a poor and unequal country. It says that top 1% of the people control 20% of the total income. Then we also talked about Piketty and Lucas report. Piketty and Lucas report में हमने देखा था, that is दो बातें, एक तो कोट देखी थी हमने इनकी, and the second thing we saw was quote was inherited wealth and invested capital grow faster than income. Then we also saw in their report from British Raj to billionaire Raj that the inequality has been highest since the introduction of income tax in 1922. It is at 22%. It was 21% when income tax was introduced. It fell to 3% during 1980s. Then we also saw the social mobility report of World Economic Forum, which said that it takes India 7 generations. 7 जन्म लग जाता है to exit from lower income class to a higher income class. Then we also discussed what is inequality. Inequality includes social inequality, inequality includes political inequality, inequality includes economic inequality. In political inequality, we talked about dynasty politics, criminalization of politics. In social inequality, we talked about gender inequality, we talked about caste-based inequality, and various other forms of discrimination in India. In economic inequality, we talked about inequality of wealth or inequality of income, unemployment, etc. Then we discussed the causes of inequality in India. And we discussed that there are structural causes to inequality in India. For example, agriculture जो है वो 45% लोगों को employ करता है in its workforce and its contribution to GDP is 15%. Then the economy also transitioned from agriculture directly to the services, so there was jobless growth. There was premature deindustrialization. So there is structural factors to inequality in India. Then we discussed several other factors for inequality in India. One important factor is socio-economic barriers. What are the socio-economic barriers? Obviously, there is gender, there is caste, there is, like we discussed, lack of social mobility in India. It takes 7 generations. Then after discussing these barriers, then we discussed what will be the impact of inequality. And impact में हमने हर फील्ड में इम्पैक्ट देखा. गवर्नमेंट में क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा, बिजनेस पे क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा, सोसाइटी पे क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा. एंड गवर्नमेंट, let us see if we have not missed any point. Oh, yes, inequality is multidimensional. Those parts we have already seen. Causes we have already seen. Acha, yes. So before we discuss the impact, we discussed GDP, potential GDP and its drawbacks. So we discussed what is the definition of GDP and how it is measured. Simple idea is that it is the final monetary value of all the goods and services that are produced in the economy. The two ways to measure this is nominal GDP versus real GDP. Then we discussed that there is limitations of GDP and there is something called potential GDP. Potential GDP is GDP which works when the economy has achieved full capacity, whether it be employment or aggregate demand or aggregate supply. So that is considered as potential GDP. Now, there are several challenges for us to reach, there are several determinants of potential GDP. There should be capital formation that is required. Incremental capital output ratio should be low. The labor force should be skilled, and there should be technological development, because technological development will be one of the factors for reducing the ICOR and the DALYs, that is disability adjusted labor year of our workforce, that should also come down. Okay, so after having discussed this, we also saw what are the challenges to us reaching the potential GDP, and one of the challenges was rising inequality. Kyunki inequality hoga, so there will be low demand, low production, low disposable income. Okay, next, there was also the problem of decline in investment, high inflation, etc. Then we also discussed what is the entire problem with GDP model. And in the GDP model, one of the problems is that when we measure growth, it does not account for negative externalities like environmental cost. It does not even factor in inequality. It does not count the system of national accounts does not measure women's household work as paid labor. This growth is merely quantitative in nature. It is merely monetary value. Whereas development की जब आप बात करेंगे तो it is a progressive change in the socio-economic structure of the country. It is qualitative growth, and this is a better indicator for developing countries. Example is green GDP, gross national happiness. So in this context, we discussed what is green GDP and what is gross national happiness. Green, when you are accounting for the compensation towards the environmental degradations in your growth, then you are going for green GDP. Green GDP basically includes environmental impact assessment and the costs of your growth towards protection of the environment. Then there is also the gross national happiness of Bhutan. Bhutan says that economic well-being is not the only kind of well-being. It includes political well-being, economic well-being, environmental well-being, as well as cultural well-being. And they put various indicators for measuring the living standard. For example, social harmony, for example, health, for example, time use, education, etc. So this constituted gross national happiness of Bhutan. In conclusion, we saw that development should constitute all the three elements, that is Paris Deal, Sendai framework, and sustainable development. It should include inclusive growth as well as sustainable development. Next, we saw one of the biggest challenges to development, that is unemployment. We discussed what is the quote with respect to unemployment. We discussed the data with respect to unemployment, the definition and types of unemployment, the causes, impact, and steps taken. In the quote, like somebody asked me the doubt, when your neighbor loses your job, it is recession. When you lose your job, it is depression. So we saw various datas with respect to unemployment, like the PLFS survey data says that unemployment rose at one point in 2022 at 6%. Then we also saw that there is a kind of paradox. At one side, the GST collection is reaching 2 lakh crore, whereas on the other side, there is jobless growth or there is unemployment in India. Then we discussed what is the definition given by NSSO. NSSO says unemployment is when people in the 15 to 59 years of age, they have the capacity to work, they are willing to work but remain unemployed. That is called unemployment. There can be several types. There can be cyclical, like boom and bust. There can be structural unemployment. There can be seasonal unemployment. There can be frictional and voluntary unemployment. Then we discuss the causes. एक बार देख लेते हैं कुछ छूटा तो नहीं. Yes, I think I have revised everything. So then we discuss the causes of unemployment. One of the biggest causes of unemployment in India is the structural causes of unemployment, which is the nature of the Indian economy. Agriculture will again play a very important role in unemployment in India. Okay. So it is a kind of repetition of the inequality topic. There will be structure of Indian economy, which is the cause for unemployment. 45% of the workforce, 15% of the GDP. There is the precocious growth model. India transitioned from agriculture sector to services sector. Youth is exiting the agriculture. Then there was premature deindustrialization. There was no good jobs being created in industries. There is weak manufacturing base. Then we discuss the socio-economic causes of unemployment. For example, there are entry barriers, especially for women on the basis of caste. There is frequent law and order concerns. COVID-19 became a very important barrier. In the first wave, 78 million people lost employment. In the second wave, 33 million people lost. Women constituted 11% of the workforce, but 50% in the job losses accounted to women. So then there was the demography related causes of unemployment. Indian workforce is not formally trained. World Bank कहता है कि 5% trained है. There is demographic bulge. हर साल जो है 12 million people are being added in the workforce, but only 1 million jobs are being created. अगर हम बात करें तो because of corruption in public employment, there is a lot of unemployment. Especially there are various exam scams. Even there is shrinking of public employment from 19 million to 17.6 million. Then there are some other government or policy induced unemployment. For example, government is trying for formalization of the informal sector like GS3 and other compliances, which is leading to them firing people. As you know, 86% of the workforce is informally employed in India. There is also the regulatory cholesterol. There are too many laws, labor laws, etc., environment compliances, etc. Then there was also NPA and exit challenge in the private sector. So these are some of the impacts. Let us see, sorry, not the impact, the causes of unemployment. Let us see if we have covered all of them. Structural, socio-economic, demographic, government, or yes. So now the impact is very similar to what we discussed in inequality. Impact on government, impact on business, impact on society. Society से चालू करते हैं. There will be bare branches. There will be distress migration. There will be feminization of agriculture, ruralization of old age. There will be increased protests for reservation. If we talk about businesses, we will never be able to reach the potential GDP. The businesses will like to remain small. Then we will lose the comparative advantage. एक अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट का कारण आप डीग्लोबलाइजेशन भी जोड़ सकते हैं. आई मिस्ड आउट इन द रिवीजन. ओके, देन गवर्नमेंट के लिए देखा जाए तो देयर विल बी लॉ एंड ऑर्डर चैलेंज, there will be reduced investment, government will have to give more subsidies for support, so there will be increased social burden, and it will affect our Atmanirbhar Bharat goals. So government undertook various steps. जैसे रूरल एम्प्लॉयमेंट के लिए हमने मनरेगा चालू किया, डबलिंग फार्मर्स इनकम, वन डिस्ट्रिक्ट वन प्रोडक्ट, GI टैक्स. Government focused on public investment in infrastructure like building roads, bridges, etc. For entrepreneurship, government came up with Skill India, Mudra loans, production linked incentive schemes. Government came up with schemes for women, Stand Up India, etc. Government came up with ease of doing business, production linked incentive schemes, FDI reforms to bring investment in India. In conclusion and way forward, we discussed the draft national employment policy, which should focus on creating sufficient number of good jobs, focusing on development of human capital, strengthening the social cohesion and cooperation between governments at all levels. So that was about the unemployment topic, which is a major challenge for inequality, which is a major challenge for inclusive growth. Now, I'll take a 30 seconds break just to catch my breath and to drink water. Till then, if any of you would like, or rather what we should do is, let us take 3-4 minutes break and you revise the first two topics, that is inequality and unemployment. Yes, done.
Yes, sir.
बाकी लोग where अमित
Yes, sir.
चलिए, so let us revise inclusive growth and sustainable development. So inclusive growth, the quote, data, definition, challenges, steps taken, way forward. First, we understood what is inclusive growth. We saw the very basic idea of inclusive growth is growth along with redistribution. We saw the World Bank definition, which talks about the pace and the manner or pattern of growth, which are interlinked and must be addressed together. OECD said that inclusive growth is growth that is fairly distributed across the society and creates opportunities for all. We saw various data. For example, poverty mein 373 million people are still having acute poverty, whereas India lifted more than 270 million people from out of poverty, which is one of the fastest reduction in the world. Social inequality में देखा जाए तो it takes 7 generations. Health में देखा जाए तो India's ranking is 102. We saw one data that people do not go to, in urban areas 70% of the people are 78% in fact are not going to seek medical consultancy from a doctor because of fear of out of pocket expenditure. Then we saw the pillars of inclusive growth. First is redistribution, second is trust, then transparency and accountability mechanism. Then we discussed about technology and innovation and ease of living. Then the various challenges or obstacles to inclusive growth. So major challenges, definitely unemployment, then structure of Indian economy, lack of social mobility, which is basically repetition of what we have been doing. There is also high inequality, environmental concerns are there. Lack of inclusive growth is also due to security concerns like left-wing extremism, etc. There is also a policy vacuum. There is increased center-state confrontation. Then we talked about the steps taken by the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The executive for health came up with Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Mission. They came up with new education policy. They came up with various employment guarantee schemes like Mudra, Manrega, etc. Then various schemes for vulnerable section like Accessible India campaign, Stand Up India for Women, etc. In legislature, we saw various laws like RTE, RTI. Judiciary came up with public interest litigation, free legal aid, etc. Then we saw Niti Aayog's steps that we should grow at 9 to 10%. We should build inclusive cities. In education, we should focus on higher education inclusivity, and governance should be citizen centric. Then we discussed the World Economic Forum's three-pronged approach, where we discussed that there should be investment in social infrastructure, investment in labor-intensive sector, and cooperation between governments at all levels. Then last topic is sustainable development, where we discussed its definition, the need, the pillars, and the challenges, and the SDG goals, the progress and the challenges, and the steps taken by India and the world on sustainable development. The definition is very, very simple. Sustainable development is meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs, born out of the Brundtland report. Okay, why do we need? Because there is over exploitation of natural resources, coral reefs are being destroyed, there is this sixth mass extinction of animals, Earth Overshoot Day has come in July. Then there is global warming and climate change. Already Earth is warming 1% above the pre-industrial era. There is lack of, there is inequality in the resource distribution. North is using 80% of the resources by only 20% of the population. There is no global cooperation. There is definitely shifting of the responsibilities. Then we discussed about the three pillars of sustainable development, which is economic sustainability, environment sustainability, and social sustainability. Economic sustainability के लिए हमको inequality of income को tackle करना है. Social sustainability के लिए women empowerment, elimination of caste-based discrimination to improve the quality of life. Environment sustainability के लिए we have to protect and conserve the environment, biodiversity hotspots. We have to conserve species through building protected areas. We should be going for environment impact assessment in the projects, so on and so forth. The challenges, inequitable growth is definitely a challenge. Then overpopulation is a challenge. There is lack of leadership. There is loss of biodiversity. There is intellectual property rights issue. Then sustainable development, we saw the goals, the progress, and the challenges. We divided the goals across three headings: economic, social, and environment. There are 17 goals across 169 targets. We have seen that poverty and hunger both have reduced phenomenally. There is increased access to clean energy. There is the number of marine protected areas has doubled. Then we saw what are the challenges. For example, biggest challenge is COVID-19, which halted the production. IPCC is saying that the effort is not good enough. There is 26% increase in ocean acidification, and more than 1 million species are now extinct. We discussed about the various steps taken. For example, EU came up with polluter pays principle. India came up with National Solar Mission, 100 gigawatt from solar energy. In our INDC targets, we had said that 40% will be from non-fossil fuel, which we have already achieved, and given the next set of INDC targets, there will be reduced GDP emission intensity by India. Okay. Various NGOs have also been working in this direction, especially IUC and Traffic and Bombay Natural Historical Society. There are two indices. One, the Sustainable Development Index by SSDN, Sustainable Development Society, and there is Sustainable Development Goal by Niti Aayog. In way forward, we should protect the rainforests. Economic transformation should be participatory, and there should be cooperation at all levels. So that is all. इसके बाद agriculture का topic है, which we have taken in the previous sessions. Okay. Now there are a few more topics. For example, Make in India and government budgeting and inflation targeting. You can see from that in the current session tomorrow, we will be taking $5 trillion economy. We will be taking dollarization, or rather I should say de-dollarization. and we will be talking about internationalization of rupee. These three topics, any of them can be asked, and economy will be over. In the next half tomorrow, we will talk about environmental sustainability, and we will discuss about stampede. So just a recall of where we are in our revision exercise. So we have completed this part. Previously, we have completed poverty and developmental issues, international relations, science and technology, ethics, integrity, agriculture and allied sector, internal security and stakeholders of development. We have completed today economic issues and economic development and issues arising out of it. Tomorrow we will be taking up disaster management, environment and disaster management topic, and we will be also taking some of the topics from current affairs, and then only polity and some parts of static polity and static geography will be left. So I think in the next 2 days we will be able to do that, so that people can focus from Tuesday, Wednesday onwards on their, or Wednesday onwards on their essay. Wednesday, Thursday you should definitely spend on essay. So we'll come up with a essay strategy session during that time for those who are writing on Friday onwards. For people batch 2 and batch 3 people, your class of essay will be tomorrow at 5 p.m. Okay, so that is all for today. Thank you for your time and patience. Good night.
Thank you, sir.